Line up!
Talking the movie The Pagan King, which is actually an English translation of its original Latvian title, which I am not going to attempt to pronounce because it will be a complete disaster. And this one is directed by Aigars Garuba, who also co-wrote this. And this movie, I would say, is essentially the Baltic equivalent of the TV show Vikings. So the story here focuses on this kind of tribe of Baltic pagans, as you probably expect. And their kind of leader is poisoned by the nefarious Christian leader that kind of wants to take over their land and have, you know, all the kind of glory for himself, etc. And on his deathbed, this kind of pagan leader names this young lad as the kind of the next king, who has really no experience in anything like that, and it was kind of a left field choice. And this kind of guy has got to not only lead his people now into victory over the evil Christians, but also have to deal with kind of people doubting his leadership abilities and doubting him, and just kind of trying to go get the kingship for themselves, and kind of to rule the land, and all the kind of political shenanigans you'd probably expect in a post Game of Thrones era. Now, on the subject of Game of Thrones, this movie is obviously coming out on the back of popular kind of like medieval style shows like Game of Thrones, like Vikings and such like that. And I would say that its nearest comparison is the TV show Vikings. But this movie has a relatively low budget, believe it or not, but it actually, I've got to say, for the budget here, it actually looks, the production value is fairly impressive. It essentially looks like you're watching 2 episodes of the TV show Viking. It's that kind of budget, but I've got to say they do a decent enough job here of setting up a kind of, a living and breathing world, which kind of feels kind of like, fairly kind of like authentic to the time. I mean, yes, obviously the language and stuff has kind of been modernised and all that kind of thing. But nonetheless, I feel like for the budget at least, they have done a decent enough job here of making it look, a world where you can kind of suspend your disbelief and kind of go along with the story here. So that was all quite good. The movie's also quite well paced, I would say. There's never a dull moment, but it is to its detriment as well, which I'll come on to. And the plot kind of rattles along at a fair old time. All the kind of good guys you can kind of cheer for, all the bad guys you can boo hiss for. But again, that's also going to be a negative, which I'll come on to in a minute. So, overall, on the positives here, I feel if you are a fan of the things like Vikings and kind of like medieval shows and cinema stuff like that, there is a lot to enjoy here, because I feel the production value looks good enough to kind of like enjoy. It's a punchy enough movie with some kind of like, some fun characters and stuff like that. But on the subject of characters, let's talk about that, because that's going to be the biggest criticism I have of this movie, is that its lack of characterization. You really don't feel like you know anyone in this movie. Even our main character, you feel he's kind of like really not all that kind of well developed in regards to a kind of a real kind of person. He seems more like a kind of a caricature. I've said that a bunch of times about films, but this one is true of this film. But some of them fare even worse. I mean, his love interest barely registers. You forget she even exists, because she kind of has so little kind of to do here, unfortunately. But there is also other characters that I feel maybe just err on the side of too cartoony. In particular, the Christians, who just seem like mustache twirling villains. I mean, this Christian commander. I mean, he killed so many of his own men. Yes, we get that these guys are the bad guys of the movie, but you, on one hand as well, you could say this is somewhat of propaganda. The Christians are always going to get portrayed as, the bad guys from a certain point of view. But anyway, that's a kind of a political discussion for another day. So, unfortunately, it lacks that kind of sophistication, maybe in the script, I would say. And I always say, even though I feel the budget is very well spent here, there are maybe a few kind of history inaccuracies that may kind of rub people up the wrong way, just kind of like slight little modernisms that maybe will kind of annoy purists to some degree. But as a movie as a whole, if you like things like Vikings and Game of Thrones and stuff like that, I'd say it's an enjoyable enough film that's fairly well paced, but it's not particularly deep. But I would say, you know, its production value at least make it give me a 7 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.